Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About Anything and Everything. Today, we'll be talking about my love for the 80s. So, if you're listening and you know me personally, you know I love the 80s. And if I could go back to any decade, I'd go back to the 80s. The music and the movie culture is just something in particular that really draws me to the 80s. Whenever I listen to some of my 80s playlists on Spotify, I'm immediately taken back to that time period. The music just makes me feel like I'm there and I'm experiencing it all. One of my favorite things about the 80s is that most people had a really goofy attitude of just wanting to have fun and live life. And that's how I try to live mine because, you only get to live once, so live it to the fullest, And people in the 80s seemed to be less self-conscious and less worried about what people thought about them. Things just weren't tacky in the 80s. You could be a fashion icon in anything you were wearing. Whether it was shoulder pads, super layered outfits, neon, and most importantly, big hair. I don't know, I just love the expression, and I feel like today sometimes people are really afraid to express themselves in fear of what the rest of society might think. And the fact that some of the fashion from the 80s is coming back makes me so happy because the pieces that we're bringing back are being paired with more modern pieces. So the outfits are more modern style in general. But we are bringing back, for example, high-waisted jeans, which is a personal favorite, scrunchies, bike shorts, and so much more. Some of my favorite artists who released a plethora of amazing music during the 80s are Elton John, of course, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Queen. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I listen to 80s music on the daily. It's not a once in a while thing. I sometimes have a hard time keeping up with new music because I get stuck on a loop with my 80s and 2000s playlists that I even forget that new music is coming out. It's crazy. I'm not even joking with you guys. I'll be in the car with my friends and we're listening to the radio or whatever. And they're back. I don't listen to anything else. Can we listen to some Elton John or some Whitney Houston or something? So I listened to your song, Tiny Dancer, and I'm Still Standing by Elton John maybe 5 times a week, and I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna apologize for it. I can't help it. I don't know why. It just makes me feel so good. Whereas a lot of music and stuff I hear on the radio today, it just doesn't give me that warm and fuzzy happy feeling that I get from my 80s playlist. It's just not the same. I don't know how to explain it. But one of my all-time faves is I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. Now, I know you guys are going to come at me on Twitter and say, oh, that's so cliche. Why are you going to talk about that song? Listen, I know it's cliche, but guys, I can't help it. If this song comes on, I'm going to dance. I don't care where I am or what I'm doing. You can't not dance to that song. It doesn't matter who you are. That's a great song, and judge me, it's a great song. Another sort of guilty pleasure song for me is Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. Love that song. It's a great one. Also want to apologize for that. And if I honestly really want to rock out, then I'm going to go for I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts because holy moly, that one is fun. Okay, if I'm in my room, and I'm, just by myself, hanging out, listening to some music, and that song comes on, best believe I'm jumping up on my bed and I'm dancing like I'm 9 again. And I don't care if somebody walks in and somebody sees me, because that's just what's going to happen. that song and just brings it out in me. And I don't know, I feel like whether it be like music or movies or just like anything from the 80s, it just like brings about so much happiness. I feel like it can do that for like so many people, unless you're just like a grouch. But most people just like to have fun and like experience life, and that's what the 80s was all about. I think that's why I admire it so much, and why like if I could just go back in time, that's exactly where I would go, because I just feel like there's just so much like freedom of expression, and like it just seemed so fun to live during the 80s, and I would just like love to be a part of that. I don't know. Another thing I want to mention is that during that time, they didn't have like handheld electronic devices and whatnot. Had like Walkmans and things like that. But, kids just couldn't sit around all day and play on their phones. They went outside and they played and they memorized their friends' phone numbers, and they hung out with their families, and they ate dinner at the dinner table, and they looked at each other and had real conversation. And I think that's why I think that's a big reason why people in the 80s were so bonded together, and so they presented more of a united front than we do in our society today, because they paid more attention to each other. And I know that we can't like turn it all around and just get rid of technology, and that's not what I want. I think we've made a lot of amazing advancements in technology. I just think that I wish that people didn't let technology consume them, and that they focused a little more on the people in their life and what was going on around them, and technology was more of a thing on the side, rather than gotta post on my Instagram so I don't lose my followers, or why don't I look like that girl on Instagram, or why don't I have as many followers on Twitter or whatever as this person. It worries me for the future to see things like that on social media, and everything just seemed slightly more simple in the 80s. I know that there were issues and people were struggling, and there were bigger world issues going on, which I'm not going to get into today. We're talking about the fun part of the 80s today, but I do recognize that there were difficult things going on during that time, and it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up the fact that I felt like people were more united, and I wish that the world was a little more like that today. So, before I sign off today, I will leave you with these: The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Dirty Dancing. Please watch them if you haven't already. Do not disappoint me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a rad Saturday. Until next time, guys.